Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at tonight's KFAST Talks. My name is Tamara Amin, and I am Program Officer at the Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Sciences and the Research Directorate, and I am your moderator for tonight. Tonight's session is on the topic of codes of responsible research conduct. A reminder that you are welcome to comment and leave questions in the chat, and we will try to answer as many of those questions as possible at the very end of the presentation in the Q&A. I'm delighted to introduce you to tonight's speaker, Ms. Rashmi Shiju. Ms. Rashmi Shiju is currently working as a Senior Compliance Office in the Office of Regulatory Affairs at Desmond Diabetes Institute since 2012. She is also a member of the Ethical Review Committee for DDI and has been for about 2 years. For more than 2 years, sorry. She holds a postgraduate degree in pharmacy from Nagpur University, and a postgraduate degree in diabetes care education and management from the University of Dundee. She has a total of 20 years of experience and has spearheaded the compliance program at DDI to ensure that research is conducted in accordance with national and international guidelines. She had created the Bill of Rights booklet for patients at DDI to know their rights and has conducted periodically ethics training and workshops for researchers at DDI. Ms. Shiju, I leave the floor to you.
Thank you, Tamara, for the lovely introduction. I am thankful to KFAS for giving me an opportunity to talk about such an important topic of codes for responsible conduct of research, where in the surge of COVID, everybody is doing the research. So it's the right time when this topic has come, and I'm thankful to KFAS for giving me an opportunity. So good evening, everyone. Hope you all are fine and refreshed after your tiring work and ready to go for the session. I hope this session will be engaging and fruitful to you. So as you have know, my name is Rashmi Shiju. So I'll just go take you through an overview of ethics in research, as it's a very broad spectrum. So we will take it up to our research ethics. And I want to declare that I have no conflict of interest. And my presentation will be outlined into these categories. That is, we will look into the definition, history, little bit of history and guidelines, ethical principles, importance of ethics, role of ethics committee, research integrity, data management, and summary. So now, definition. What's ethics? As per the Merriam-Webster definition dictionary and Gordon dictionary, ethics is defined as norms for conduct that distinguish between acceptable and non-acceptable behavior. Or it can be defined as a discipline which deals with what is good or bad with moral duty and obligation. Now, ethics, it is applied in all factors, in finance, in spiritualism, in everything. Now, each person will have a different, based on the situation, will respond to ethics differently. Now, let us come to research ethics. What is research ethics? It clearly defines the application of moral rules and professional codes of conduct throughout the entire life cycle of a research, starting from the collection, analysis, reporting, and publication of information, specifically when the research involves human subject participants. We have to take care about their protection, subjects' right, privacy, confidentiality, and the informed consent form. Now, why ethics is important? Why? Because in the past, there are so many inhuman experiments conducted. So we will look into it one by one. So from 1932 to 1972, Tuskegee experiment on syphilis study was conducted, which was very inhuman. The poor African Americans were deceived for treating their bad blood. In 1949, penicillin was discovered. In spite of that, it was not used for treating their syphilis disease because researchers wanted to know the progression of the syphilis disease. Then comes the horrific experiment conducted by Nazis from 1939 to 1945, where the prisoners, they were not at all consented for any participation in the study, but they were forced to participate in all kinds of horrific experiments, starting from the cold temperature, high temperature, twin studies, and whatnot. Then comes in 1944 to 74 the human radiation experiment during the Cold War, where it was a secret experiment sponsored by US department to know the effect of atomic radiation on the citizens, which were over the doses which were recommended. And there were many more thalidomide studies where congenital anomaly birth defect was happened due to thalidomide exposure to pregnant ladies, and many more. So all these past history events led the think tankers to craft certain guidelines. So the first came Nuremberg Code in 1947, which was as a result of the Tribunal on Nazi Researchers. So this code is a prototype for a later development of many codes which were intended to assure that research subjects are protected and it was conducted in an ethical manner. Then in 1964, we can see Helsinki Declaration, World Medical Association. They developed the guidelines which added another aspect that subjects' well-being is prioritized as compared to the science and society. This was an added norms as compared to the Nuremberg Code. And then comes in 1979 Belmont Report. This became the primary ethical framework for the protection of human subject in research. This was acted upon as an aftermath of Tuskegee syphilis study, and in response to the National Research Act, which was drafted in 1974. Here, they stressed on the point of introducing a federal agency or independent body to monitor the research conduct and to assure that research is conducted in a proper manner with the protection of human subject. Then in 1993, Council for International Organization for Medical Sciences, they drafted or developed an international ethical guideline specifically for developing countries. In this, there was an addition that if a subject gets injury because of the participation, then compensation should be provided. And also the justification for placebo in the absence of intervention. Then comes in 1996 ICH-GCP guidelines, which is International Conference of Harmonization. This is basically for clinical trial studies conducted by the pharma companies. Then in 2000 to 2001, OHRP, Office for Human Research Protection. This was formed by US government, which oversees all the research which are funded by NIH, and also in the US department, all the IRBs or the Ethical Review Committee should be registered. Then let us go back, find out what is ethical principle. There are three basic ethical principles, that is respect, beneficence, justice. Now, respect has two aspects. One, that is individual has to be considered as an autonomous agent. And second, those with diminished autonomy should be given additional protection. I will explain this by using example. Suppose a researchers conduct a study using a X drug intervention, and the side effect for that is brittleness in bone. But researchers do not inform this side effect in the consent form. So this is withholding the information. Denial to respect happens when there is a denial to the freedom of judgment by a subject, or withholding the information which can be helpful to make a judgment by the participant. These all leads to lack of respect. Then beneficence, as you know, do not harm, maximize possible benefits, and minimize possible harms. So the risk should not be greater to the daily routine what a subject is exposed to. Then comes justice, which is very important. That is, there is a fairness in distribution, and injustice should not occur to the subjects, different population. Like in 19th centuries and 20th century, the elite treatment was always flowing to the private patient, while the burden was taken by the poor patient. So there should be a justice in the fairness in distribution of participants while designing the study. Now let us see what are the requirements for a research to be conducted ethically. So there are three important aspects, that is informed consent form, risk benefit assessment, and selection of subject. Now informed consent form is the cornerstone of ethical conduct of a research. It has three elements: information, comprehension, voluntariness. Now, let us see one by one what it is about. Now, information, as you have seen in the informed consent form, it deals with all the information related to the study, its description, duration, the purpose, the benefit, the foreseeable risk, discomfort, compensation, maintaining confidentiality and privacy, if there is any alternative treatment, voluntariness, that is the right to withdraw from the study at any point of time, and also the contact information if the subject has any query scientifically or about their rights. These are the important aspect in the informed consent form. Now, comprehension. It is the manner and context in which the information is conveyed. So in DDI, the informed consent form is provided to the subjects in a bilingual language, English and Arabic. So investigators should give enough opportunity to the participant to answer their queries, satisfy all the, even the silliest query should be answered by the principal investigator to, so that the participant can make a judgment about the participation in the study. And here, the ability of a participant to judge or to make a decision depends upon the maturity and rationality and the language. So that is why when a physically challenged or mentally challenged participants want to enroll in the study, a legally representative of that person should sign the consent form on behalf. Voluntariness, this is very important. I mean, there should not be any coercion or undue influence on the participants, so the decision is not made influenced. For example, if a study PI says that I can give you 500 KD, you participate in the study, it becomes a coercion. Or you are a friend of mine, please participate in the study, or you are a relative. So these all obligations or coercion, undue influence should not be there. Then only the voluntariness is intact. Now, risk benefit assessment. The risk and benefit must be balanced and it should be in a favorable ratio whenever you are designing the study. The risk should not be greater than the daily exposure of a subject's routine exposure. And whenever vulnerable populations are those pregnant ladies, then prisoners, children, they are all categorized as per the FDA as vulnerable population. So when they are involved in the study, a reasonable justification should be provided. Now, selection of subjects. This I have already told in justice, but I will just touch upon again that again, economically disadvantaged subjects or racial minority or very sick people, they are easily available in the research settings for manipulation. So injustice occurs when they are enrolled in the study without reasonable justification. So PI must take care while selecting the subject that the burden should not be imposed on these people where they can be, for administrative convenience, enroll in the study. Now let us look upon the types of consent. I have talked about informed consent form and their elements. Now let us see what are the different types of consent form. Now, written consent form. This is a type of document where the participant read through all the information in the comprehensible language and signs on the consent form. This is basically important for studies which are conducted with more than minimal risk. There is an intervention and more than minimal risk. That kind of study requires written consent form. Now, verbal consent form. These are consent provided by the participants verbally. This is specifically suitable for studies where telephonic survey is conducted without identifying their personal information. Then there is implied consent, where participants' opinion is asked about yes or no or certain kind of opinion without identifying them themselves. Such studies are used, implied consent is used for such studies, as if many of you have filled the questionnaire. So this becomes the part of implied consent form, example of implied consent form where your opinions are obtained. Then assent, this is very important. As I told you in the earlier slides, vulnerable population, children is a vulnerable population. So when children are involved in the study, assent must be obtained apart from the parental consent. So in Kuwait, age above 20 years, 21 years is considered as majority. So below that age, everybody requires assent and parental consent. So if in a study, parent provides the consent, but child is not ready to assent because of fear and apprehension, then child's decision prevails. Now let us see why ethics is important. So ethics promotes the aims of research such as knowledge, truth, and avoidance of error. By having laws such as prohibition against falsification, misinterpretation, falsifying, and providing a true data. And it also promotes essential collaborative work. As you know, research is not a one-man show. It requires many people, teamwork, collaboration. So it enhances collaboration when there is a trust, accountability, mutual respect, and fairness. This comes because there is a guidelines for authorship, copyright, there is an intellectual property right, patent policy, confidentiality rules. This all helps to build the essential work required for the collaborative work. Then it helps responsible. Researchers are held responsible, accountable to the public. And it also gets a public support. I mean, public people are likely to fund a research project if they can trust the quality and integrity of research. Apart from this, there are many social and moral values that are being promoted by the ethics norms, following the ethics norms, such as human rights, animal welfare, compliance with the law, and health and safety. If there is any lapse in the research integrity, it is going to harm not only human subject, animal subjects, students, and public. Example, if a researcher conducts or fabricates a data in a clinical trial, it may harm or even kill the patients without and also researcher who do not abide by the regulation and guidelines of radiation safety, he may jeopardize the health and safety of himself and staff and students. Now comes to the role of ethics committee. I know most of the researchers consider ethics committee as a bottleneck, but their role, as you have seen in the guidelines, it is mandatory, made mandatory in 1979 by Bellman report. So their function is to safeguard the dignity, rights, safety, and well-being of the participants in a research study and to review and approve the research protocol based on the adherence on ethical principles. So in DDI, we have two committees, one for human subject protection and another for animal protection. So Human Subject Protection Committee has members from different fields representing scientific, non-scientific, layman, non-affiliated, and both gender. And this committee is approved by Ministry of Health, and every 2 years these members are shuffled. Now this is the approval letter of Ministry of Health with terms of reference. Then Ethics Committee of DDI is registered under US Department of Health and Human Services, and it is assured under federal wide assurance with the number 71190, IRB 0007190. Now let's come to our topic, research integrity. What is research integrity? It can be defined as following honesty, accuracy, fairness, trust, efficiency from all aspects of research, right from writing the protocol, designing the study experiment, applying for funding, generating, collecting, recording, interpreting, archiving, sharing data, presenting and publishing the results. Now, how to ensure research integrity? How to assure that integrity is assured? At DDI, we have an auditing process where researchers, after submitting the progress report, are undergoing audit by Office of Regulatory Affairs, where the informed consent form and other documents are reviewed, and the adherence and the compliance are fulfilled. If not fulfilled, then deviation, audit report is generated with a category of minor, major deviation. If there is a major misconduct or ethical violation, it is then subject to the investigating committee as per the policies of research misconduct and integrity. The minor audit observation and major audit observations and their corrective actions are to be fulfilled by the researcher within the time specified, and it is put forward to the ethical review committee for their decision. Some of the few violations which happened is noted down here. Like there was a pilot study which was conducted without ethical approval. So the decision was given by ERC to discard all the samples which are collected unethically. Then second case was an failure to adhere to the approved protocol. So ERC's decision was that ERC will not give any approval to publish the data which is collected from unapproved protocol. Then third case was involvement of a staff in the study while policy discourage employee participation. So the ERC gave the decision of discarding the samples collected from the staff. Then there was a misconduct for the publication where an ex-employee of DDI shared the data in a poster presentation without giving acknowledgement or due credit to DDI. So decision was an apology letter was provided by an ex-employee and corrective actions were conveyed to the organizers of the conference. Now let us see the statistics of lack of integrity. Dr. Stam published recently in 2020 based on the publication database, retraction database, and he found that the highest reason for the retraction is contributed by plagiarism, followed by fabrication, falsification, and then authorship dispute. I think it's a busy slide. You cannot view, I think, clearly. Then another, it is a little old data, 2009, Gavraleski, he has noted down that 61% is contributed fabrication, falsification, 35% is contributed by plagiarism, and 4% others. Now let us see why there is a lack of integrity. So according to Fennelly, he has published the data in 2019 where he's saying, according to him, the factors responsible for lack of integrity are policies, pressure to publish, culture, peer control, early career, and gender. So we look into it, the policies. According to him, when there is a policies for encouraging research and penalties, this will deter researcher from doing misconduct and bolster integrity. This lack of policies is responsible for the misconduct, according to him. Then there is a pressure to publish because in certain countries, the career growth is directly linked with the number of paper published. So this puts a pressure on scientists and there is a chance of misconduct. Then culture. According to Schrank, the mostly developed or regulated countries where the economic growth is prioritized as compared to the regulation, in those countries there is a risk of misconduct, while there is a low risk on the regulated bodies where regulation is given priority as compared to the growth. Then peer control, like integrity is at stake when there is a lack of respect and open communication and transparency, or when there is a lack in mentorship and the collaborators are discouraged, or unavailability of collaborator to have critical criticism for the results or data. In those conditions, there is a chance of misconduct. Then early career. Those who are in the early career, they do not have a proper training, or they are not completely aware of the science and ethos, and they have not maintained or they have not attained a reputation in professional career. So they have less to lose but more to gain. So in this situation also there is a chance of misconduct. Then gender. Gender, it is as per the Office of Research Integrity of US Department, the number of papers retracted for a certain period of years shows that male are more committed to misconduct than female. I know most of if the attendees are men, they must be upset with this comment, but these are the data from the Office of Research of Integrity, where male they commit more research misconduct. That is because of their high aggression, competitiveness, and their risk for appetite. This is the graph which is published in Plus One Journal in 2019 by Fang FC, based on the Office of Research Integrity of US Department, where you can see male is predominant. And misconduct. Now I was talking about misconduct. We look into what is the definition. So lack of integrity leads to misconduct. Or research misconduct means fabrication, falsification, plagiarism in proposing, performing, and reviewing research or reporting results. Now we will see what are the examples of misconduct: plagiarism, fabrication, personation, sabotage, professional misconduct, defamation, abuse of intellectual property rights, abuse of research resources, piracy, and denying access to information. Now, plagiarism is a deliberate copying of ideas, text, or data, or other work, and without considering this as your own, without due permission and acknowledgement. That is plagiarism. Personation, falsification, and fabrication will come in the next slide. Then personation, the situation in which, like, you are a student, you will do your friend's assignment, you will submit your friend's assignment on behalf of him or her. That becomes the personation. Sabotage, you prevent others from completing their work. In Office of Research Integrity of US Department, there are many case studies which are reported. One of the case was that a researcher was trying to do the blotting, Western blotting, was not able to get the result, getting junk and proteins and extra, which was unusual. And she repeated number of times, but still there is something fishy which she cannot find out. So she suspected of sabotage, but she doesn't have any proof. Then the camera was fitted in the lab, and then it was found. She felt that the dish has some smell of alcohol. It doesn't look like the same. Then it was found through the camera that another researcher is spraying the alcohol bottle in the fridge where her dish is kept. This is because he wanted to slow down her work. Then the researcher was sued, and there was cases and penalties were done. Then defamation, failure to follow the legal norms or abusing intellectual property rights and denying access to the information. All these are examples of misconduct. Now, plagiarism, since this is the most highest reason for retraction of paper, and this thing I will stress on this point, like turning to someone else's work as your own, or copying words or ideas from someone else without giving credit, or failing to put the quotation in quotation marks, or giving incorrect information about the source of quotation, changing the words but copying the sentence structure without giving credit, or changing the word and not giving the due credit. These are the plagiarism. Now, what is fabrication? Fabrication is an intentional act of making up data or results and recording and reporting them. For example, fictitious subject interviewed. If you need a set of 100 person individual to be interviewed, you will create a fictitious data. Okay, only 50 collected and 50 you will say it is being interviewed. Creation of a data set. Adding fictitious data to real for statistical validity. Suppose the sample size you have calculated for 100, which is in a good power, and then still there is a dropout and you are not able to, so you will extrapolate to get a statistical significance, or you add a certain data, fictitious data, or you insert a clinical note in the research record. These are all fabrication example. Then we can look into the case study where, in a lab, Dr. A explains about the junk on the fluorescence image of a protein with colleagues. And as per their suggestions, Dr. A photoshopped the image for better acceptance in the journal. As you can see, this is the junk, and then Photoshop and cropped, and finally it is ready to go to the journal. So this is a case of fabrication. Now, falsification, both are much related, falsification, more slicing and more manipulation to the equipment, material, and suppressing the data or results without scientific or just statistical justification, such as falsification of dates and experimental procedures in the study notebook. Because when a research is done, in each day, as per the date, you write your observation and the results, so that when it is published and there is a reconstruction, others public in a public domain, everybody should be able to reconstruct the study. So it is done in a proper way. If there is a manipulation, then it will not result in a good science. Or falsification of telephone call attempts done to collect a telephonic survey study, that is also falsification. Or addition of misleading statement in the manuscript, misrepresenting the results from statistical analysis. These are examples of falsification. From the Office of Research Integrity of US Department, there were certain cases like a researcher falsified data in his for publication by removing outlier values or replacing outlier values. Then another researcher, he falsified 56 case report forms while acquiring the data on the bacterial infection for patient demographic and other health information with no evidence to support this result with the medical records of patients. So he simply wrote 56 case report with the observation of bacterial infection, while the medical records is not supporting of those demographics of the patient. Then, as you know, during weekends, students will be busy. So he was supposed to inject the compound of investigation on cynomolgus monkey, but he did not do it. But he falsified that he received the response of anti-obese drug on the monkeys when the compounds were assayed for cocaine and methamphetamine, but actually he never gave. Now, integrity in publication. This is also very important. As per the ICGME recommendation, there is a clear indication related to the authorship. So, according to ICGME, there is a substantial contribution to the conception or design of work or acquisition, analysis, or interpretation of data. An author should participate critically in writing and revising the manuscript. There should be an agreement of accountability from all aspects of the work in ensuring integrity and accuracy. However, we see that there is a ghost authorship and gift authorship. Ghost authorship, when an individual has substantially contributed in the scientific design and conception and acquisition. However, authorship is denied, that is ghost authorship. Then there are cases of gifted authorship, when an individual has not at all contributed in the conception or design, but still an authorship is awarded. So research integrity, similarly, publication integrity is also important. Then there are duplication, slicing, salami slicing of publication. All this is happening. Now, every institute should have a body, compliance body, who can check on the manuscript and their integrity before submitting it to the journal. And also, if there is an investigation required by the journal against an author, the institute should have a body to look after this. These bodies will review the documents from the author's contribution perspective, plagiarism, ethical approval of an ethical statement to comply with the international guidelines. Now comes to another topic, that is conflict of interest. Conflict of interest means any situation in which the staff or employee has an opportunity or appears to have an opportunity to influence the institute's decision to personal, financial, or professional gains. So that is why in the first slide I have declared that I have no conflict of interest. Now, all the international conferences, presentation, and recognize in university, and even during publication, it is a requirement to declare conflict of interest. Now, we will look into certain examples to clarify more on the conflict of interest. So, Dr. A, he has invented a drug on, to prevent Alzheimer's disease, and the device company wanted to sponsor a study where Dr. A is a PI and he has to develop this test device so that it is delivered directly into the brain. And Dr. A's spouse happens to be the president of a lab solution from where Dr. A's lab gets all the supplies and equipment. So it shows a clear conflict of interest. There's a gain, financial gain. Then another case is an academician who has a senior editorial position with a commercial journal, and he also happens to be in a library committee where he recommends journal for subscription. So this is also a case of conflict of interest. Then another case, Dr. Y is a faculty member reputed in a reputed university, and he was asked to review a publication for a journal. And after receiving it, he realizes that the author happens to be a student who is working with a faculty member, fellow faculty member in the department. And in a social gathering, he met, and that friend has mentioned the merits of this author. So again, there is a conflict of interest. Now, what do we do when there is a conflict of interest? How do we manage it? First, disclose always. Second, manage the conflict. And third, prohibit the activity when necessary to protect the public interest or the interest of the university. Data management. This is also equally important. While apart from collecting research, data management is very important for a good science. A PI should talk with their team before submitting the proposal, and all these issues are addressed related to data management, that is data analysis, data reporting, data sharing, and data retention, storage, ownership. All these aspects has to be addressed in the study proposal plan with the team. Now, data collection and analysis. Data collection, it pertains to a systematic and accurate and consistent collection of data. And analysis is selection or systematic selection of a data for interpretation and evaluation. The record keeping is also very important as a part of research integrity to reproduce it at the later stage. Now let us see a case study on data collection. Dr. A conducted a survey using questionnaire, and one of the pages of the questionnaire got tampered or got lost. What PI should do? He should, as per the research integrity or following the research integrity, he should omit the participants' questionnaire from the study, because taking the questionnaire again will change the response and situation and time and mode of the participant. So it is better to drop this participant. Now, data retention and ownership. Data retention refers to the length of time one needs to keep the project, and it depends upon the sponsor and funders guidelines. So in a normal research setting, basic research setting, the data is retained for 3 years from the submission of financial report or from the submission or publishing the article. But for clinical trial study, it may vary from 10 to 20 years depending upon the drug. Now, data ownership pertains to who has the legal rights to own the data, and it is very complicated, involving PI, institute, funding agency, and any participating human subject. But by and large, it is the institute who owns the data, and the PI is the steward or custodian of the data. Now, data storage and sharing is very important to safeguard our research and investment and time, and to be able to reconstruct the study which will augment the future research. So storage is very important, and sharing of data as per the institute's guidelines or sponsors guideline is very important, because it stimulates new idea and contributes to the field of study. And whenever there is a sharing of data, the rights and privacy of the subject involved should be protected all times. All de-identified data should be stored. Now, data protection and reporting. So physical data as well as electronic data should be protected from physical damage or tampering or theft, flood, fire, and everything. So this can be done by a proper archive room with the full fireproof and waterproof, limited access to the data, protecting the system, and data integrity through encryption and regular backups. Data reporting should be based on the various guidelines and the restrictions or the institute. All the results, whether it is positive or negative, should be reported or published after the project is completed. Now, Data Protection Act, Western and European countries have well-established Data Protection Act, and they are being periodically revised. But as per the web search, I couldn't find any data protection regulation in the state of Kuwait. However, financial sector and labor law data protection related obligation is set out. Now, good science can blossom only when the research is conducted and documented by following these general ethical principles, that is, honesty, objectivity, integrity, carefulness, openness, respect, then responsible mentoring, responsible publication, respect for colleagues, non discrimination, and legality. The take home message or the summary is knowledge and awareness of ethics is important for a responsible conduct of research. Ethical Review Committee plays an important role in upholding the ethics by ensuring the conduct of research involving human participants in an ethical manner. Policies and guidelines promoting an ethical culture and environment minimizes the misconduct and ensures research integrity. Responsible data management is equally important in all phases, starting from planning and data collection to data analysis and dissemination. Declaring and managing conflict of interest is the key to avoid potential conflict of interest. Customized guidelines and legal act for research data protection for the country is needed. And lastly, I would like to quote, we cannot change the human condition, but we can change the condition under which humans work, by James Rison. So thank you. And I'm open to question and answer. Happy to answer if you have any queries. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Rashmi. If
My
the audience
pleasure.
has any questions, if the audience has any questions right now, they can post them. If not, then I think we'll end the session. That was really enlightening. You really covered a whole breadth of what a researcher would have to consider when thinking about research ethics. Thank you so much. And thank you to the audience for coming tonight. And I think we're going to leave it at that. Great.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, Tamara, Shihab, and Mohammed. Thank you so much. Thank you, audience, for patiently listening to me. Thank you so much.